Hi, and welcome to Noble Sustainability Stories for 2022. My name is Kate Treitman Brown. I graduated from Nobles in '99, and I work as the Director of Graduate Affairs. This year, we are sharing stories of graduates who work on issues of sustainability, climate justice, and environmental science in a variety of industries. We're excited to kick off the series by hearing a Noble sustainability story close to home. Current Class 1 student Alex Janower has a lifelong passion for climate justice and has been a change maker in the Nobles community and beyond. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
To start off with, can you tell us a little bit about what got you interested in sustainability and climate justice?
Yeah, so I've always been really passionate about the environment. I'm a very outdoorsy person. I even spent the last semester of high school at a semester away school called Alzar that focuses on outdoor education and sustainability, which is really, really awesome. And I find peace in nature, and so I want to take care of it and be a good Samaritan to it. I just think it's the number one priority for humanity at the moment. I've taken Enviro, and I've been involved in the Sunrise Movement, which is a youth activism organization for climate justice, and I do EAC at Nobles.
That's great. And the Alzar School, can you tell us a little bit more about what Alzar is and maybe how it changed your views on climate justice?
Yeah, so it's a program that's all focused on hands-on outdoor learning. It's a really small group. We went to Idaho. It's meant to be half in Idaho and half in Chile, because there's usually a part that's about Spanish immersion as well. But because of COVID, we couldn't go to Chile. There are students from all across the U.S., usually some Chilean students as well, and they just teach us to be good stewards to the environment. We learn skills like leave no trace, and we also learn skills like important medical skills so that we can take care of ourselves in the backcountry, so that we can be in the backcountry more. It's really awesome. And it was so cool to take Enviro there, because when we're talking about dirt, our hands were in the dirt. When we're talking about snow, we're romping through the snow. And we're talking about thermal inversions. It's foggy. We're in between mountains right now. So it was really awesome to see what we were learning.
Let's bring it back to the Nobles community here on campus. And I know you've done an incredible amount of research on different practices here. Can you share with us a little bit about some of that research?
Yeah, sure. So at the beginning of the school year, I realized that Nobles has all these harvest meals and things like that. In the fall time, we have some meals that are all local foods and that are prioritizing local seasonal ingredients to teach people to have more plant-based local eating. And I was like, well, if they care about this, I'm sure they have some other sustainability initiatives in how we're eating. So I talked to Mr. Burek, who's the director of food services at Flick through Flick at Nobles, and I learned a lot. So the important context is that there's three main chains of agriculture that we get our food from. There's the industrial food chain, that's CAFOs, which are essentially feedlots. There's industrial organic, which is like your cage-free chicken, but they're not really very cage-free kind of situation. But so that's mass production feeding into things like Whole Foods, but they're not using pesticides. They're not using fertilizers. So it's not as bad for the water cycle, but they're still not helping with any like carbon sequestration from the air, which the soil has magnificent ability to do, but with monocropping and tilling, that's just not possible. And then there's sustainable or regenerative, which doesn't monocrop, so they plant multiple things in one place and generally builds up the soil in a way that has a negative carbon footprint. So it helps to sequester carbon, and it also tends to be better in the long run for the farmer, and especially as the climate's changing. It's just a more sustainable method for the environment and also for costs and product and things like that. So Nobles gets its produce through a supplier called Sid Wainer and Son. They work mainly with industrial organic farms, all within the New England area. They're pretty local and they're quite sustainable. They offer a very comprehensible interactive map of where they source products from on their website, and it's super cute because you can click on it and you can be like, wow, we get our asparagus from there, this cute little farm in New Hampshire. And so it is industrial organic, and I was saying earlier that a lot of industrial organic farms will find the loopholes in what they're allowed to do and fit right in there, and it's not as great as it sounds. But I looked into some of the farms that Sid Wainer partners with, and they really hold true to their standards. Their farming practices are very ethical, and it's clearly something that Sid Wainer prioritizes, which I really, really appreciate. So our vegetables, fantastic. Eat them. We get our meat fresh, not frozen, from Cisco. Cisco is generally a very large operation. It's the largest in the U.S., but they have a sustainability statement, and they're trying to make the switch to continue to be more organic. They also have a number of social responsibility goals and things like that are working towards sustainability. And also, when we get it fresh, not frozen, which we do, but it's much more difficult to do during COVID. We've been getting it frozen more often during COVID with the supply chain down. It's caught. It's not caught, but it's butchered more recently, so it's fresher. It's more local. We probably bought it close to us. And then we get our fish from Dole and Bailey. They're fantastic. They only source from small vendors. They pride themselves on knowing their vendors very closely. So it's protecting small local communities and also small fisheries. Instead of bigger companies, they don't engage in unsustainable fishing practices like bottom trawling, which can destroy habitat, which is awesome.
That's awesome. So can I ask a personal question about your own food choices? How does sustainability and any of these ideas affect what you choose to eat?
Yeah. So I used to be a vegetarian because I know that meat can be really harmful for the environment. But I realized that a lot of the non-meat alternatives that I was eating were still very processed and were industrial or organic grown vegetables. That's really not better. So recently I've switched to being a conscious carnivore. My diet is mostly vegetables anyways, but overall I try to make sure that I'm eating from organic or, when I can, sustainable and local sourced food. My family buys our meat from this awesome program called Walden Local Meat. They deliver straight to your door. It's all local meat from regenerative farms. Their main goal is sustainability. It's also delicious. It's fantastic, and I don't feel guilty about eating that meat at all. Like, I want to help this business grow. It makes me really happy.
That's great. And switching gears back to the Nobles campus, I know you had a chance to sit down with some of the leadership at the school, Steve Ginsburg and Mike McHugh. What did you learn from them?
Sure. So what I learned from them, awesome, so cool, is that there aren't any particular goals or stats for our sustainability goals at Nobles and our buildings and things like that. Instead, we just try to minimize emissions and electricity use everywhere that we are. So they do really thorough energy modeling of every piece of equipment that comes in and try to invest in long-term tech that would decrease the energy consumption the most. So maybe instead of buying something that really decreases the energy consumption right now, if they have something that does decrease it quite a bit now, but will last for 15 years, they would invest in that. There's a lot of really, really cool technology that they've used. So first of all, in lighting, my favorite thing is that they a bunch of the buildings, such as the academic center, the library, the front of the science building, etc., have daytime light harvesting. So there's sensors inside the buildings that will tell the lights how much sun is coming in. When there's a lot of sun, we can dim the lights inside. They don't need to be shining bright. And then when it's overcast, that's when the lights turn on. And it also makes sure that they're not on all the time. Most classrooms have motion sensors as well. And which is really cool. It's just about like not using more energy than we need to, using really cool technology. We also recently switched to LEDs pretty much everywhere. So no fluorescence, and that decreases our footprint as well. And that was really cool. The electricity company incentivized them to do it by saying, essentially, like, you're going to pay off the cost of the LEDs in just a few years by just using the less electricity. We also have some other things about just using less energy, such as with the temperature, which can all be controlled in Mike McHugh's office, which is really cool. So when people aren't using a room, they make it colder. When a bunch of people are going to be in a room later, like in Lawrence Auditorium, there's a ton of people there every morning, right before, they make it pretty cold. And then we all come in and we all warm it up. And by the time we're sitting there and we're all comfortable, like, it's warmer because all of our body heat is in there, which is really cool. And also with our AC, there's a system that we use that instead of doing, essentially the simple version is like, usually AC units do like a lot, none. A lot, none to make it even. And what ours does instead is pretty medium all the time and modulating on that medium for depending on what we need, depending on CO2 levels, depending on the heat inside, etc., which is really cool. Something else that I thought was really interesting, a lot of people will ask, like, if Nobles cares so much about sustainability, then why don't we have solar? And it just doesn't work very well here. We have too much tree canopy for that, and there's just not like the right sun for it. It's really hard in New England. And also, like, if they get rid of one tree that has a diameter of over 4 inches, then they have to replace it with 2 trees, which is difficult because we have nowhere to plant trees. Like when they were building Lawrence, he was telling me that they took down a few trees and they were arguing with the town because they were like, look, we are more than happy to plant these trees, but tell us where. Like, we'll plant it somewhere other than Noble's campus, question mark. And they ended up bargaining to do a 4-to-1 shrub ratio instead of a 2-to-1 tree ratio, which I think is cute. But yeah, they tried to do like a canopy thing over north that we'd all park underneath that was solar, and none of that really ended up working out. So they've looked into solar like 3 or 4 times, and they're going to look into it again. They said they're probably going to look into it again when they're redoing the Omni as well. But so there are actually solar thermal panels in the new castle, which is just an alternative way to provide hot water in the building, but it's not like a huge relying on solar kind of thing. Something else that I thought was really interesting is that we have one LEED certified building, which is they said that they wanted to do a LEED certification. It's the castle to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability as a community, but that it's actually really expensive to do and not always the most practical. Like they say, you can't, in order to be LEED certified, they couldn't put AC in the top buildings of the castle in any of the residential buildings, but the people who are living there are like, well, I want AC, so then they put the big window shakers in, and those use way more electricity. And that's just one example. And like things like they have a bike rack outside the castle to get to gold certification, but like just because of how our campus is, like nobody ever puts any bikes in it. So like, but so that demonstrates their commitment to have a LEED certification in general. But the truth is that a lot of the other buildings at Nobles could be LEED certified. We're just not paying to get the official title.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Can I ask more about you and sort of your plans for after you move on from campus, after learning so much about the school and our sustainability practices and definitely affecting some change here? How do you see this interest in sustainability, climate justice playing out in your future, both professional and personal?
Yeah, I think the more research I've done about sustainability over my high school career, and the more people I've had the opportunity to talk to, I become more and more fascinated with how many ways that you could get into working in sustainability. And so I know that I want to do something regarding the environment when I grow up, but I can't choose. There's so many options. I think I'm not going to go the science route, but I might go businessy things, maybe entrepreneurial things, maybe engineering things. Who knows? But for sure something in sustainability. But we'll see. I'm taking a gap year next year before college to try to figure out more of what I want to do. And I'm sure I'll be able to work sustainability into whatever I end up doing.
Yeah, what are you doing for your gap year? Do you have any plans?
Oh yeah, and sustainability based, of course. I'm gonna spend this summer working on a very cute farm in Martha's Vineyard that is also quite sustainable and has some fantastic processes. Super small farm. Cattle are often big methane emitters, and Grey Barn, the farm I'm going to work at, is really good about it. So I'm going to work there this summer, and then in the fall, I'm going to take a program to Bolivia and Peru with a gap year program called Where There Be Dragons that also focuses on sustainability and agriculture. So I'll be able to work on small farms there and learn from the people there and take some college level courses about agriculture.
Well, Alex, thank you so much. I'm going to end with one last question, which is that, we have graduates who just graduated from Nobles last year, all the way up to folks who are in their 90s. What advice would you have for someone who sort of wants to learn more about sustainability, is interested in the topics that you've shared with us today?
Sure. Well, the first step for sure is education. I find that the more that anybody learns about sustainability and the climate crisis, the more that they feel impetus to make change. And so definitely starting with great education. If you're here and listening to this podcast, I'm sure that you would also like the podcast, My Climate Journey. I really like that one. And I have a bunch of other movie and book recommendations on the EAC website, which there's definitely a link in the description. And and the Walden Local Meet share that I talked about earlier for sure.
Fantastic. Well, Alex, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. And for everyone listening, thanks for listening to the story of Noble's sustainability. And please stay tuned for next month when we share another story. Bye.